The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today show for June 20th, 2019. It is NBA Draft Day, draft night coming up. But on today's show, we're going to be talking about, first of all, I should introduce myself. My name is Neil Rochlani. I'm also here with Erik Ong. I shouldn't say here with Erik Ong, but on the show with Erik Ong. And we're going to be talking about, first of all, some news and notes. We'll be talking about Mike Conley and the impact of that for not just himself, but also the two teams that are affected. We'll get into a little bit of the NBA draft, and then finally we are breaking down the Golden State Warriors. Before I bring on Erik, let me just mention that we are sponsored by Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee. You can find their delicious coffee products at hawaiianisles.com or on amazon.com. And now I bring in Erik Ong. How are you doing tonight? Or I should say, it's this morning where you are. How are you?
Hi, Neil. Yeah, it's actually noon where I am in my part of the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's. I'm glad to be back. First of all, yeah, thank you for having me back on your show. I'm excited to talk about the NBA. Obviously, no longer fantasy right now, but the NBA in general, and it's a great time for the league.
Oh yeah, we can also talk about the. You're going to be on the Hoop Ball show tomorrow. Was there a show going tomorrow? Is it a?
No. I'll be covering. Oh yes, by the way, shout out to everyone who's going to be with me, crewing up Hoop Ball, the Hoop Ball feed. We're going to be live blurbing the NBA draft. Every pick, every transaction, it's going to go live on hoopball.com.
Oh, God bless you, because that is going to be crazy. The NBA draft always has like these multi-team trades in addition to the picks going on. So you guys are going to be busy as heck.
Yes, that's. I'm half looking forward to that, both because of the exciting news and for the panic I'll be going through as I type away at those blurbs. But overall, it's an exciting day. I'm actually glad that there were a lot of trades that are already happened over the week. Saving me some blood, sweat, and tears for tomorrow night or tonight, as this show is airing. Actually,
yeah, that's a great segue into our first topic, and that is the Mike Conley deal to Utah. There was rumors last year he might go at the trade deadline. If I remember correctly, he was held out for a couple games because there was thoughts he was going to go. There was that thing where I think he said goodbye to his teammates or something at one point, or goodbye to the fans, and then it never transpired. And now he's finally being shipped off to Utah. What are your initial thoughts about this? Did you see it happening? Do you have any hot takes you want to share with us before I give mine?
Oh well, yeah. I pretty much had the Jazz locked in on Conley as far as last season was concerned. They were the actual front runners, or should I say, the team that showed the most legitimate interest in Conley, with them wanting an upgrade for their Ricky Rubio. And it appears they've been able to acquire Conley without having to give up Rubio. Just to summarize the trade, they're giving up Grayson Allen, Jay Crowder, and a still playing Kyle Korver, God bless his soul, and I think a few picks for Mike Conley. So I don't think they're done. I actually think that the Jazz may trade away Rubio or let him go or whatever, but I don't think we're going to see a shared, a timeshare situation between Conley and Rubio. That said, I agree with what I've been reading mostly online, and that the Jazz, this move drastically improves the Jazz's chances to come out of the West as far as way too early playoff pictures are concerned. because Conley has a better, well-rounded game compared to Rubio. He can score. He's a obviously a solid defender, and he can pass. So I'm pretty happy for the Jazz. With getting Conley.
Yeah, let me ask you your first take though. Let's start with Conley. Um, Fantasy performance next year. Um, Better, worse, no change.
Worse, actually. As talented as Conley is, and as good as he's been over the last couple of seasons with the Grizzlies, I can't help but notice the impact that the style of play that the Jazz have. It's going to make an impact on his game because they're a very slow paced team. They're a very deliberate team as far as focusing on half court sets and whatnot. They're not the push the tempo team, and it's that style of play is going to have an impact on Conley. He's not going to get to run the floor as much, and as we know, up tempo styles are more favorable as far as fantasy production is concerned. At least as a general rule.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Also in Memphis, like, he was sort of relied upon to score. They didn't have many options, and I think that will take a hit in Utah as well as they have obviously guys who can score the basketball. And you're right, the pace is gonna affect him as well. And then as we know, he's someone who has been in the past very good at steals, and that tends to go down as you get older. So I think his steals might take a little bit hit too. So yeah, my initial thoughts is his value is going down. I'm not sure how much I'll devalue him, but probably not a whole lot, but certainly at least around a value, if not more. Any thoughts on how this impacts the main guys over there in Utah?
Well, yeah. Not so much based on Conley's arrival per se, but at first I was trying to analyze how will this impact Donovan Mitchell, who's still a young up and coming guy who really probably hasn't touched his ceiling as far as his development is concerned. And I think we're gonna see Donovan Mitchell play farther from the basket because if you think about it, the Jazz have traded away some of their best 3 point shooters in Corver and Crowder. Um, they're left with Smoke and Joe as their best 3 point shooter, and I think they're gonna need Mitchell to spread the floor a bit more, allow Rudy Gobert some of that extra space down low in the post. Yes, I don't think Mitchell's gonna get hurt a lot. Having a solid pass first guard like Conley playing alongside him might actually work out for the better. But I fear that playing farther from the hoop is going to cause a slight dip in his field goal percentage. Unfortunately.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously, he didn't have as much of a leap this year as a lot of us had hoped based off that rookie year playoff performance that was sort of like that big breakout for him, and then it kind of subsided here in second year. But I think having experienced backcourt will might help him in some areas. We'll see. I don't know how to really evaluate this on Mitchell just yet. I don't really think it impacts Gobert at all.
Nah, not really. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
gonna he's gonna board. He's gonna block. He's gonna do what he does.
I think
He's
this
he's, he's
might.
solid.
Yeah, he's solid. I think this might hurt Ingles' assists a little bit. Because he was running a bit of the offense off ball of Mitchell, and sometimes Rubio would just bring up the ball up the court and kind of hand it off pretty quickly. And Conley, I don't think is going to do that as much. So we'll see. We'll see how they run the offense. But I think this might hurt Ingles' assist. Do you have any thoughts on how that might impact Ingles?
I'm inclined to agree with you, actually, Neil. I think that we're gonna see the ball in the hands of Conley and Mitchell a lot more. Um, that would free up Ingles to become the primary kick out 3 point shooter actually, and we're gonna see from there if he's gonna be able to do bring to the table a lot of those peripheral contributions that we he's been known for and has become a fantasy darling over the last few seasons.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that doesn't do anything great, but he does it all pretty well. And that makes him really valuable in fantasy. And we'll see if he does take a hit there, or if perhaps the offense still kind of runs through, not runs through him, but he still has the ability to make those plays with Conley out there as well. All right. I don't think there's anyone else really on Utah we need to talk about unless I missed somebody. Should we head over to Memphis and think about how this impacts their team and their fantasy, some of the players over there? I mean, my initial thought was DeLon Wright was in line for some serious load, but as we were talking about before we came to recording this, you mentioned that John Morant is projected to go to Memphis in the draft tonight. So maybe I'm wrong about that. What are your thoughts on the point guard situation in Memphis?
Oh yeah, that's for sure. The Grizzlies have already, broadcast that preference of theirs over a month ago, actually, and I think they're pretty much locked in Morant. Um, just before we got on this to record this show, there was some news that came out regarding the Pelicans in that they're, let me see, trying to acquire that second overall pick that the Grizzlies hold, hoping to steal R.J. Barrett, whom the Knicks, who have the third pick, have been targeting. I think that for some interesting dynamic, they're hoping to keep that Duke tandem of R.J. Barrett and Zion Williamson, who they're obviously going to be taking first overall, intact because they clearly show that they're able to run that floor quite well together. But again, because of Conley's departure and because the Grizzlies did not get a point guard in return in that deal, I'm not holding my breath that the Pelicans will be successful. If ever it does happen or come to fruition, they might need a third team in the mix to give the Grizzlies some rebate. But if in the end that this rumored moves of the Pelicans does happen, your DeLon Wright idea might just he might be a big impact player because the guy was a monster towards the tail end of 2018-19 and actually killed me and cost me a third place finish in one of my leagues.
Yeah, he had a great down the stretch. I think Memphis is obviously going into tank mode. Um, yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. It's going to be interesting to see how his development matures without the sort of veteran leadership that they once had. So curious to see if that means he has more free reign just to kind of go nuts, or if this means his development is a little bit stifled because it doesn't have as many people there guiding him. So it's too early for me to say on him. Hopefully, he'll be back. I think he's coming back at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure actually on that. I should probably.
Yeah, I think he's going to be healthy.
Yeah.
I think he's recovered, and the Grizzlies were playing it safe with him. Obviously, what's holding me back from coming in with a serious hot take on his projection is the fact that there's still uncertainty as to whether the Grizzlies will be keeping Jonas Valanciunas. I think I'm not sure, but I'll double check. I think he's opting out of his deal and may or may not, be with the Grizzlies. He was actually, yes, Valanciunas is declining his $17.6 million player option and is going to become a free agent. So he might actually be wearing a different jersey. And so we might just actually have JJJ, manning the entire front court with, I don't know, with Ivan Rabb tagging along and, making a mess of things along with him. But, it's going to be a very young front court for the Grizzlies if Valanciunas does leave the Grizz.
Yeah, and I don't know if how you feel about this, but I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, but Jay Crowder was pretty fantasy valuable when he played for Boston a handful of years ago. He had a pretty solid role over there. Do you think that might resurrect here in Memphis?
Okay, I've come to terms with that, and I think similar to Isaiah Thomas, we're gonna have to chalk it up to the Brad Stevens effect.
Okay.
And I think it was more of a result of him being coached by Stevens and Stevens being able to be, that wizard coach that he is, bring out the best in a player like Crowder. So I think we're gonna have to let go of that image of Crowder. Obviously, a faster pace in Memphis is gonna favor him, but I don't think we should hold our collective breaths expecting a Boston Celtics Crowder to find a renaissance in this upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I was just hoping you just go that way, just to see what you would say. Because I think Crowder, he had many opportunities last year. I think when there were injuries in Utah, and he was never that great, even when he had a lot of minutes. And I don't think he's going to resurrect that fantasy value, unfortunately. Although I'm not sure in Memphis who's going to be much more valuable. I mean, who else is going to be there for a lot of value besides Jaren Jackson Jr. and then maybe John Moran if he ends up there as well.
Well, if healthy, Slow-Mo is somebody
Slow-Mo.
I'd consider because he's
Yeah.
an often overlooked guy. Like even some podcasters I know don't even remember him.
I totally forgot about Slow-Mo.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Anderson is somebody who's um, often forgotten because he doesn't pop. He's solid, doesn't hurt you anywhere, but does a bit of everything.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that's a very good fantasy value player, or he has a lot of fantasy value, much more so than his sort of reality value sometimes it seems out there. And I'll be interested to see. Obviously, he had some injury issues last year. I'm not sure if his role is set with this team. This is one of those teams that I think could be having a lineup out there we may not be familiar with until we see it on opening night and into the preseason. So I'm kind of holding my breath on, not holding my breath. I'm kind of waiting to see what emerges in Memphis before kind of taking a stab at these guys. Anyone else on Memphis you want to mention you think might be impacted by this trade?
No, not really. I think we're gonna pretty much see a tanking Memphis team. They're gonna, uh, you know, build around Jackson, Morant, if assuming they keep that second pick, or even if they get the fourth pick, they probably would go with somebody like Garland, who's still a legitimate guard. He's just not as notable for his passing ability in the same way that Morant is. But whether it's Morant or Garland, they're going to build around, a young core of Jackson and that whoever they're picking, and looking to the future. They're not looking to make the playoffs anytime soon. Their window is probably 3 or 4 seasons from now, as far as entering the playoffs are concerned.
Yeah, you're right about that. Their windows, I don't think they were in any rush to be good. So we'll see. We'll see who they play and even how many minutes the starters play. Maybe they spread it around too, not worrying about getting a lot of continuity. All right. Well, then speaking of John Morant, I guess this is a pretty good transition to go into the NBA draft. I am not someone who really follows the draft that closely. I don't watch a lot of college basketball throughout the year. I do love the tournaments, but besides that, it's just not a game I follow that closely. Obviously, I know who Zion Williamson is. I know John Morant. I know the guys from Duke. I know Jarrett Culver, and then DeAndre Hunter, I believe his name is. But I don't know how these guys are going to fit in to their teams, aside from maybe Zion and Ja. Well, first of all, are you a big draft guy? Do you get into it? Obviously, you're doing the show tomorrow night. What am I saying? What have you must have prepped then for this, right?
Well, a little bit, but to be to be completely transparent, as I don't get to follow the NCAA a lot, being living in the Philippines, I don't get to follow college ball as much as I should. But that said, I do a bit of research, but again, it's still very shaky at best. But this being still predominantly a fantasy basketball podcast, I must say that more often than not, we shouldn't really look at rookies as far as looking for fantasy value is concerned. Maybe the odd 2 to 3 guys with impact. Obviously, you've mentioned Williamson. Obviously, Morant would be an ideal situation to produce right away. But aside from a handful of rookies, it's really rare that you're going to have, let's say, a LeBron James type who will, make that much of a splash right away when they start their careers.
Yeah, but I wanna try to put you on the spot here and have a little fun with this. Is that okay?
Oh, sure,
All right.
sure, sure.
So let me go. Let me do two things here. Um, Zion Williamson versus why am I forgetting his name? The guy. This is so embarrassing. The guy from Phoenix, the number one pick, DeAndre Ayton. Who has a better fantasy season next year?
Oh, from the get. Oh, okay. I'd say Aiden.
Yeah.
Aiden was a pleasant surprise as far as I was concerned. In a lot of drafts, I saw Jaren Jackson Jr. being drafted ahead of Aiden. In Dynasty, obviously, I've started Dynasty last season, so to get me in a better spot to appreciate rookies. But Aiden was a pleasant surprise. His lack of blocks was obviously a bummer, but his solid, shooting from the field, doesn't really hurt you from the free throw line. Um, Now, Williamson, I think, may be prone to a bit more um, turnovers from the get go, but his ability to contribute defensive stats will be a plus. I think that gap, I must say, though, that the gap between Aiton and Williamson will close um, quite quickly over the next few seasons, and we might actually see Williamson overtake Aiton eventually. But since your question was just limited to next season,
Yeah.
I would still prefer Aiton over Williamson in a redraft league.
I agree with you there. And one thing I'm worried about Williamson, as much as I like him obviously he's a fantastic player. I'm worried about him getting in foul trouble a lot. I don't know how much you said you won't be able to watch a lot of the NCAA, but when I watched him play, he made a lot of fouls that were not. I would just say they weren't like at the point of attack. I think he was just making silly mistakes, and I'm worried he's going to take advantage of it as a youngster in the NBA. So we'll see. We'll see if that impacts his fantasy value at all. But yeah, I agree with you. Long term, I'd rather have Williamson over Ayton, but next year I would take Ayton. So now I'm going to compare. Who would you take, John Morant or? And I'm blanking again. The guy from Atlanta,
Trae Young.
Trae Young.
Okay. Wow. All right. Again,
I'm sorry, I did not prepare you for any of this.
no, it's all right. It's all right. Okay. I'm a converted Trae Young fan. I was not high on him at all, but his post All Star break performances, as I was watching those box scores, blurbing Trae Young, and the guy really took a significant leap as far as his scoring efficiency was concerned. And, him being able to bring 8 point something assists per game, aside from 3 point shooting, aside from 20 plus points per game, it's very interesting. I think I would still go with Young. Okay, it's going to be close. I think they're going to be maybe around apart in year-end value. I think that if you want the passer, Morant might actually end up passing more or have the better assist averages. But Trae Young's package of scoring, 3 point shooting, assists, and hopefully a little bit of steals next season at a maybe low 40-ish field goal should be enough to keep Morant at bay. Morant is still, does not have. He's a bit scrawny, so I think his body is not yet NBA ready, as they say. So he might, get banged up a little bit here and there, especially with his, cut to the basket style of play is concerned.
Yeah, this one is tough for me. Just because Young has the ability to hurt you in those turnovers and the percentages if he's having an off night. So, and we'll see how he shoots next year. And I think Morant seems pretty NBA ready. But I think you're right. I think if I had to pick, I'd have to go with Trae Young. It's just too hard to pass up the points and the 3 pointers, and he's a great playmaker, and I think it might not even be close next year. He might blow him out of the water as well. So, yeah, I just would have to I'd have to agree with you as well there.
To some extent, buddy. I think
What's that?
one thing I learned last season is
Yeah.
that turnovers can sometimes be overrated. Or,
Yeah, I actually don't even care about turnovers, but I know most people play 9-category leagues, right? Because
exactly. So,
yeah,
I think, with guys like James Harden, ruling the fantasy basketball universe,
yeah,
um, so what? If you do all of
yeah,
that,
right.
the hell with turnover sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's too hard to like try to uh, pay attention to that category because a lot of the guys that have the best statistics in every other category have bad turnovers, so it's really hard to avoid them. All right, so those are what we're assuming the top two guys in the draft. R.J. Barrett expected to go third right now to the Knicks, like you said, unless we see a move beforehand. Do you think he has a good fantasy season next year? Any thoughts on him?
Barrett, yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. Actually,
yeah,
I think that he's gonna be he's being compared actually to Andrew Wiggins, but I think that's a bit unfair. I think he brings a far more dynamic stat set. Barrett has shown that he can do a lot more. So I would, um, tack on an Andrew Wiggins as far as scoring comparison is as a base, but Barrett will be able to rebound more, pass the ball better, and maybe chip in a little bit more on defense. So he's going to be a better rookie than Andrew Wiggins was when Andrew Wiggins came onto the scene.
yeah. I haven't seen enough of this game to know it, but I think that's like you said. I think he's a different type of player than Wiggins. So we'll see. I'm expecting much different things fantasy wise from him. I don't know if I'll rush out and get him. I was hoping he was going to play with Kevin Durant next year, but that's obviously not going to happen. Even if Durant goes to the Knicks.
No one's playing with Kevin Durant.
Exactly. But before we segue to the Warriors, is there anyone else on the draft board that you think will have fantasy relevancy next year?
Relevancy. And by relevancy, do we define that as
Oh
top
yeah,
one,
I usually do 12 teams. So yeah, so like maybe top
top
125.
150?
Yeah, but yeah, be 150 at the very bottom. I'm thinking more like 125 ish.
For outside of the top three, it's actually hard to say.
Yeah,
I think the top three guys will be standard league viable, quote unquote. Um, Guys like Garland, DeAndre Hunter, who you've mentioned, maybe even Jarrett Culver. Those additional three names I'd toss in there as late round flyers, possibly. Hunter, for example, has a 3 and D type of skill set that could be useful. Um, but again, with these other names that I'm tossing out there, it'll all really depend on where they end up landing and whether or not they're going to be able to have the opportunities to get the minutes, get the usage, and put up the stats that we're going to need in order to use them in fantasy basketball.
yeah, we're gonna have to see where they because we know the top three are probably going to be starting for their team next year, right? We can kind of
Yeah, for
if
sure.
they go where we expect them to go, and then after that, I think it's hard to say who's going to be starting. So that's where you kind of get your minutes, and that's where you kind of get your usage from. So I don't know how good those guys are, to be impactful in the NBA, but also fantasy impactful. So I don't have much thoughts on them. So nothing to add here. All right, anything else about the
Time
draft?
to move on then.
Yes, anything else about the draft before we move over to do our
No,
season
it's all right.
review on the?
We can now lament the future of the Golden State Warriors.
Yes, exactly. When I think I talked to you last time, we had talked about the Warriors winning the title. At least I was predicting that.
Same here. Same here.
Did not foresee these injuries. I think I had thought it was going to be 5 or 6 games. My thought was they would split in Toronto, and then Kevin Durant would come back, and hell would break loose, and they would win in 5 and maybe 6. But obviously things have changed quite a bit since that episode. Before we get to the future, let's recap the past. I'm looking here at 8 category ranks. Curry was 4th overall last year on a per game basis, 2nd in total because he played almost all the games during the regular season. Um, don't want to jump ahead, but I think he's in line for maybe being the number 1 guy in fantasy coming up, especially in 9 category leagues. Durant, another first round value, had a phenomenal season until that heartbreaking Achilles tear. Finished 8th on a per game basis, 4th total. Draymond Green, top 20 in both. Klay Thompson, actually 15th on total. He played so many games, 34th. And then Cousins, kind of finished where I thought. He played not that many games, just 38 games, including the postseason, but finished in the mid 50s. We'll see if you have any thoughts about him for next year. First of all, any thoughts about last year before we forecast for next year?
I was actually stung by Draymond Green.
Yeah.
He saw a significant dip in usage, so much so that it dragged his per game value in 9 cat outside of the top 50. And for a guy that I was pretty much targeting somewhere in the top 30, I was at a deficiency in value, on teams that I drafted Green. Obviously, not much surprises from Curry, KD, etc. They top 10 value, no questions there. Klay Thompson had his, weird share of ups and downs, actually. I think that Thompson, who by and large is roughly known for his consistency, was actually quite erratic more than usual on a week per week basis. And there were weeks that he would go ice cold, then eventually find his shot, a week or two later and string 3 or 4 games where he was performing well. But overall, it's when you have a 3-point shooter able to finish the season in shooting from the field 46%, almost 47. There's very little to complain about. Again, I know you said looking to the future later, but Klay Thompson breaks my heart that what happened, ACL and all. But yeah, outside of those guys and Cousins, as you said, there really isn't much to talk about as far as the Warriors were concerned. They prior to Cousins' return from his injury, they tried to do a center by committee, which failed miserably. In the end, just before he went down with an injury of his own, Damian Jones emerged as their best guy over the course of, I think, 5 games. He eventually, after going through Jordan Bell and Kevin Looney, Steve Kerr eventually decided to go with Jones, and Jones was able to, average maybe 5 boards and a block per game as a starter. He's still young, he's still raw, but he might actually be their quote-unquote center of the future once he gets his basketball IQ up there.
Yeah, that's the really interesting position because we don't know if Cousins is going to sign with them again. We don't know if Looney's going to be there as well. I don't know what their thoughts on Jones. Like you said, at times got some run. He looks like he has potential to play in this league. Not sure what's going to happen there. But before we go to the front court, let's start with the back court. I want to go with Steph. I am already planting my flag on him as the number 1 player in fantasy next year. Am I crazy?
No, I think he's going to produce a lot. 5 threes per game are easy for Steph. Scoring somewhere close to 30 points, maybe even more. He's without Klay, without KD. He's pretty much the Warriors' offense, and that's the big question. Actually, who's going to help him out? The Warriors are in an interesting spot, and obviously they want to keep guys like Klay, maybe even offer a KD a deal. But these guys are not going to be playing, and Curry by himself is not going to win them enough games to make the playoffs. I highly doubt that. Just take a look at the Houston Rockets template right there. James Harden, as good as he was last season, was not enough to, he took him to the playoffs, but the Rockets didn't win a championship. So Steph is going to be great. Steph is going to be crazy. So as long as he keeps his ankles, taped together or taped up and, not busted up, I think he's going to perform quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I know people are worried about it. He has had injuries in the past, and it's certainly been a recurring thing with the ankles. But he did play 91 games this past season, including the playoffs. And some of the games he didn't play in the regular season were just for rest. I think every superstar is going to have a lot of load management next year, as we saw with Kawhi in Toronto. I just think that Steph is going to be scoring in the 30s. He might make 5 to 6 3-pointers a game. His rebounds are solid. His assists may actually go up because he's going to have the ball's going to be more in his hands than just sharing it with Durant in the backcourt. And
go up. Who's he going to pass to, dude?
The man is phenomenal at passing. He will find someone. We'll see. Maybe Quinn Cook will be knocking down threes. Maybe Jerebko will be out there. I don't know who's going to be out there. I don't know if Iguodala's coming back. I don't know. I just know that this guy, they'll find a way. They're too good of an organization, too good of a coach, too good of a player not to find a way to score lots of points. And I think he'll be heavily involved with everything. So, are you there?
Yeah, okay. I agree with you.
Okay, perfect. So, yeah, I'm taking Steph over Harden. I know this probably sounds crazy. Partly it's because I just like watching Steph play way more than watching Harden play. So, part personal preference. Anyway, Durant, as we all know, will not be playing next season. Do you think this helps Draymond Green and his fantasy value?
Yeah, because it's pretty much going to be a two-man game between Steph and Draymond.
Yeah.
And we're going to see an uptick in his usage. He's, he's going to do what he does. He's going to, rebound, do everything else except score. Maybe in this case, in this situation and scenario, Draymond Green might actually have to score at this rate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
He's going to do it all, literally, save for his less than desirable free throw shooting accuracy or lack thereof. I think he's going to be an excellent multi-cat guy, probably top 30 value again, or along that range, maybe top 25 even, depending on how the Warriors make their moves.
Yeah, that's the thing. How do they fill out their roster? We'll see what happens with their signings in the offseason. But I think Draymond, he averaged 8.8 points per game last year, and I think that changes next year. I think he does have to score probably like 50% more, like maybe like 12, 13 points a game. And I don't think any of the other statistics take a big hit. So you're right, his free throw percentage is not great, but he's not shooting that many free throws. And I think the turnovers will kill you, like you said, they did in 9 category leagues, but I'm starting to write off that category anyway. So I think his value goes up just a little bit next season. Not enough to really reach for him, but I think if he falls, I would take him. And then Klay Thompson expected to miss most of the season. I don't think he'll be drafted in most leagues unless people are in not dynasties. What's that called? Keeper leagues or keeper leagues. Yeah. Thank you very much. Or you just want to like hold on to them for your playoffs, which I guess is not a bad thing to do. But that's just way too far in advance planning for me. All right, let's go to DeMarcus Cousins. Let's assume he signs here for in Golden State. Do you think he becomes a lot more valuable?
Yeah, obviously, yes, because it'll be him and Curry. But part of me really thinks that that the organization has earmarked him as somebody who's, going to be leaving the team. So I don't foresee him. I've heard /read Steve Kerr wishing Cousins well thinking that he's going to be able to get a good deal elsewhere. So I don't think there's this impression that DMC, who is obviously still after some sort of max deal, um, despite being providing a mixed bag of results in 2018-19, you know, um, he's, I don't think he's going to stay with the Warrior, actually.
No, I don't
Unless
think
he takes a big cut.
No, yeah, I don't think he's going to stay there either. I don't. I think he came here kind of like wanting to rehab and kind of chase a ring, and he's got his rehab as best as he can, and he's not going to chase a ring next year. So I think he's gone. So this, if they re-sign Looney, do you think?
I like Looney.
Do you like him a lot? I like him a lot too. Yeah.
I love him. I don't understand last season's hype of Jordan Bell. I know Bell is quite athletic and all, but as far as I'm concerned, between Looney and Bell in this Tweedledummer situation, Looney has the actual better basketball IQ. I think he makes a lot less mistakes, commits a lot less ticky-tack fouls, as they call them. Unnecessary loose ball fouls, and I think Looney would be the more productive guy to look at as far as maybe a late round flyer pick is concerned.
Yeah, if Cousins goes and Looney's resigned, I last year he was around 200th, so he wasn't fantasy relevant on a per game basis. I think he can get inside the top 75 if he's their main guy.
75. That's quite generous.
It's very generous. I know he only played 19 minutes a game, but I think
no. Yeah. All right, Kevin Looney has his limits. I think top 150 is closer, or maybe top 100 is as far as I'd go.
All right.
I don't. It's too much. He's had opportunities in the past that he started. He's shown that he can be productive, but in the end, at the end of the day, Kevin Looney is still just a solid athletic role player in the post. He's not going to be, a facilitating big man like Green is. He's just there for extra boards, extra blocks, some lob alley-oops here and there. But that's pretty much as you see. What you see is what you're going to get from Kevin Looney. Well, you probably see better Looney than what we've, been accustomed to. But I don't think a drastic turnaround of top 75 value is something that I'd expect from him.
All right, you mock me a little bit, but I'll tell you this: so last year he got.
I dare you! I double dare you!
19 minutes a game. I'm saying if he is playing around 30 minutes a game, I think he will be top 75. That is just my if-then type hypothesis.
Okay, then I should expect that I told you so, Erik.
You will get that I told you so.
In the future, you're going to ask me to come on just to tell me you told me so. And look at Kevin Looney now. All right, I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but all right.
We'll see. We'll see. The other guy here, I think the only other interesting player here that might pop next year is Quinn Cook if he gets more minutes. Or do you not even see him as a potential fantasy asset?
No, I actually think Quinn Cook has some potential. We might see some double point guard, recipes, starting point guard recipes in action for the Warriors. Him and Curry playing together at certain times in the game, and not just subbing for Curry. It's simply because the Warriors just need somebody who's able to put up points on the board.
Yeah.
Cook has shown in the past that he can do that, but just not alongside Curry. So we're gonna see if changes can be made along that front.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly one thing that really jumped out this postseason was the lack of 3-point shooting when they lost Durant and Thompson, and we'll see. So Cook came and knocked down a lot of shots. At least took a lot of shots. He's not shy out there. We'll see who they sign in the offseason to sort of fill that out. I know there's been some chatter that they're going to make a priority to get 3-point shooting, but I'm not sure exactly who that's going to be. So we'll see. Quinn Cook is obviously not fantasy relevant yet. We'll see how this roster rounds out before making any moves on him. But I think that's it. Is there anyone else here you're interested in?
Um, no, not really. It's a bit too early to think that Jones will make an impact. He probably will be still somewhere closer to the top 200 than to the top 150, but who knows? Again, he still has some ways to go. I really think that without the addition of another scoring threat, the Warriors might not even make it to the playoffs.
Oh, you're kidding
Given
me.
their,
Don't say
yeah,
that. They're still in the playoff content. Come on. Really?
it's just Steph Curry and Draymond Green for crying out loud. No. That's not gonna happen. Especially with the moves that's happening in the West. The Lakers just got stronger with Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
The Jazz just got stronger by consolidating and getting Mike Conley. I believe that the Thunder, who are trying to offload some cap space, are making some moves. The Rockets are reportedly targeting somebody like Jimmy Butler. So I don't know how they're going to afford him, but you know, the West is really there's blood in the water, so to speak. The Warriors have shown that are not able to defend their title anymore, and a new boss is wanting to emerge from the West, and we're going to see who that's going to be.
Well, I totally agree with you there. I mean, I don't think the Warriors have much of a chance of making the finals next year, but not making the playoffs would shock me. Um, so
I'd say the Clippers finish higher than the Warriors.
I will. Oh, I'm not. Well, if they get Kawhi for sure. If they get Kawhi, they would definitely finish higher. But I will have you back on so you can say I told you so if they don't make the playoffs. That would be a very bold, a bold thing to come true. All right, Eric, I'm going to wrap this up unless you have any other final things you want to share.
No, thank you very much. It was, as usual, a blast. I enjoy every time you invite me to come on the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and hope to be on again sometime soon.
Yeah, so should people just go to Hoopball tomorrow, hoop-ball.com to check out the...
Yeah, of course. Check out our coverage of the draft and pretty much our coverage of everything that's NBA and fantasy related. We've got you covered.
Yeah, live blurbing, is that what it's going to be? Or just
Yeah.
up to the minute blurbing on the draft tomorrow at hoop-ball.com, our homepage there. And then you can find Eric, what's your Twitter handle?
Oh, yeah. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at Fantasy Hoopla. That's HOOPLA. If you want to ask me anything that's fantasy basketball related or anything NBA related, I'd be happy to chat.
Yeah, please do hit him up. You can follow me or tweet at me at Ball with Neil. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Tomorrow, Adrian and Coach will be, I'm sure, talking about the the reality NBA draft results, and also doing a review of the Toronto Raptors. And then Dan will be back on next week on Monday, giving all his takes on everything that's probably going to transpire that Eric's going to be blurbing about tomorrow. It's always a crazy day in the NBA draft. You always see, in addition to players getting drafted that we don't expect, we also see often big trades that will impact not just the reality landscape, but the fantasy landscape. So with that, I just want to mention again, our presenting sponsor is HawaiianIsles.Kona Coffee. You can find their products at HawaiianIsles.com or on Amazon.com. And enjoy the draft, and we'll be back on tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.